If your legs feel heavy by the end of the day, if your feet are colder than the rest of you, if you get cramping at night. That wasn't there 5 years ago. The explanation almost nobody gives you is this: your blood vessels have become measurably less responsive since you turned 60. And what you eat in the evening is one of the few things that can directly influence how much blood reaches your legs while you sleep. Not a supplement, not a prescription, not a lifestyle overhaul. 7 specific foods that work through the same mechanism, and a timing that puts the effect where it does the most good. Here's the mechanism behind all of it, in plain terms. The cells lining the inside of every blood vessel in your body, called the endothelium, do a job that most people have never heard of. One of their main jobs is producing a chemical signal called nitric oxide, which tells the smooth muscle in the vessel wall to relax. When that muscle relaxes, the vessel widens. More blood gets through. Less pressure, better flow, warmer feet, less pooling in the lower legs by the end of the day. After 60, the endothelium's ability to produce nitric oxide declines measurably. Research published in Circulation and reviewed in the Nitric Oxide Journal has documented this as one of the primary vascular changes associated with aging. The vessel walls become less responsive to demand. Blood flow, especially to the extremities, reduces not because anything is blocked, but because the signal to relax and widen is quieter than it used to be. That's the problem these 7 foods address, not by treating a disease, and not through supplements or pills, through giving your body the raw materials and the conditions it needs to make more of the signal it has started making less of, and timing it so the effect is active during the hours your legs need it most, while you're horizontal and movement isn't doing the work for you. Why eating this before bed matters. The timing of when you eat these foods is not a small detail. Nitric oxide from dietary sources typically peaks in the bloodstream roughly 2 to 3 hours after consumption and sustains elevated levels for several hours afterward. Your legs have their worst circulation during sleep, when you're not walking, not standing, and gravity isn't helping move blood upward. Eating these foods with your evening meal or in the 2 hours before bed puts the nitric oxide effect right in the window when your leg vessels need the most support. This is also why people often feel the difference in the morning rather than immediately. Less overnight pooling, less morning stiffness, legs that feel lighter when you first stand up, is the effect of better overnight circulation, not something that happens in the first 20 minutes after eating. Food. 1. Beetroot. Beetroot has the highest concentration of dietary nitrate of any commonly available vegetable. When you eat beetroot, bacteria on your tongue convert the nitrate into nitrite, and your body then converts nitrite into nitric oxide in the bloodstream. This is a well-established pathway documented extensively in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition and the Journal of Nutrition. The effect is measurable. Blood vessel diameter, blood pressure, and peripheral blood flow have all been shown to change in the hours following beetroot consumption. Cooked beetroot, raw beetroot, and beetroot juice all work through the same mechanism. If you find the taste difficult, a small portion of cooked beetroot added to an evening meal is enough. You don't need a large quantity. The pathway activates at modest doses. Food 2. Dark leafy greens. Arugula has the highest nitrate content of any leafy green, followed closely by spinach, Swiss chard, and kale. All of them work through the same nitrate to nitrite to nitric oxide pathway as beetroot. A standard serving of arugula or spinach in an evening salad, or wilted into a meal, delivers a meaningful dose. One thing worth knowing: mouthwash immediately before or after eating leafy greens can significantly reduce the conversion process. The bacteria on your tongue that convert dietary nitrate into nitrite are the same bacteria that antibacterial mouthwash kills. This doesn't mean stop using mouthwash. It means not using it within 30 minutes of eating these foods, specifically if you want the nitric oxide effect. Food 3. Walnuts. Walnuts work through 2 separate mechanisms, which is why they appear on almost every research list about vascular health. The first is L-arginine, an amino acid that is the primary raw material your body uses to produce nitric oxide through the enzyme nitric oxide synthase. Walnuts have one of the highest concentrations of L-arginine of any whole food. The second mechanism is omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3s reduce inflammation in the arterial wall and help maintain the flexibility of the endothelium, the cells doing the nitric oxide signaling in the first place. A small handful of walnuts in the evening, not a large portion, the L-arginine effect doesn't scale dramatically with large doses, provides meaningful support to both pathways. Walnuts also have one of the better omega-3 profiles of any plant food, and omega-3 fatty acids directly improve the flexibility and responsiveness of the endothelial cells doing the nitric oxide signaling, which means the raw material and the production system both benefit from the same small handful. Food. Dark chocolate. This one surprises people, and it needs a specific qualifier. Dark chocolate at 70% cacao or higher. The mechanism here is flavanols, plant compounds found in cacao that have been studied extensively for their effects on the endothelium. Research published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology found that cocoflavanols directly stimulate the production of nitric oxide by endothelial cells, independently of the nitrate pathway that beetroot and leafy greens use. A few squares of 70% or higher dark chocolate in the evening is the dose that appears in research. Milk chocolate does not produce the same effect. The processing and milk content significantly reduces the flavanol concentration. It has to be genuinely dark. Food. 5. Garlic. Garlic's effect on blood vessels has been studied for decades, and the most established mechanism is through an enzyme called nitric oxide synthase, the enzyme responsible for producing nitric oxide in your body. Allicin, the active compound released when garlic is crushed or cut, has been shown in multiple studies to increase nitric oxide synthase activity, meaning the enzyme works more efficiently and produces more nitric oxide from the same amount of raw material. Garlic needs to be fresh and either raw or very lightly cooked to retain allicin content. Crushing or chopping and then leaving it for a few minutes before adding heat preserves more of the active compound than adding it directly to a hot pan. Even a clove or two in an evening meal is enough to produce a measurable effect on vessel relaxation. Food. 6. Pomegranate. Pomegranate works differently from everything else on this list. Rather than increasing nitric oxide production, pomegranate's polyphenols specifically protect nitric oxide that has already been produced from being broken down before it reaches the vessel wall. Nitric oxide is chemically unstable and can be neutralized by free radicals in the bloodstream before it does its job. Pomegranate's antioxidant compounds, which are among the most potent of any fruit, extend the active life of nitric oxide in the circulation. Research in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry documented measurable improvement in blood vessel function and nitric oxide bioavailability following pomegranate consumption. A small glass of pomegranate juice with an evening meal or pomegranate seeds added to a dish provides the relevant dose without sugar overload. Food. 7. Tart cherries. Tart cherries are the most specifically timed item on this list, which is why they belong in the before-bed slot more than any of the others. They contain both anti-inflammatory compounds that reduce the vascular inflammation that worsens overnight circulation, and melatonin, which in this context matters not just for sleep, but for the cardiovascular system. The overnight reduction in blood pressure that melatonin supports is directly relevant to the quality of peripheral circulation during sleep. Research in the European Journal of Nutrition found that tart cherry consumption reduced inflammation markers associated with arterial stiffness, and separately, the melatonin content has been linked to improved overnight cardiovascular function. A small glass of tart cherry juice or a portion of tart cherries in the evening addresses both mechanisms simultaneously. This is also the item most specifically tied to the morning outcome. People who use tart cherry regularly often notice it first, not in their legs during the day, but in how their legs feel when they first stand up. Less stiffness, less heaviness in those first few minutes of the morning before they've moved around properly. You don't need all 7 tonight, and you don't need to prepare a separate meal. The simplest version is a salad of arugula or spinach with a handful of walnuts and pomegranate seeds, a few squares of dark chocolate afterward, and a small glass of tart cherry juice before bed. That covers 5 of the 7 items and both pathways, the nitrate to nitric oxide pathway and the flavanol and polyphenol protective pathway, in about 10 minutes of preparation. Beetroot and garlic work best when they're part of a cooked evening meal rather than a quick addition. If you already cook a regular dinner, adding a portion of roasted beetroot and crushing a clove of garlic into it is all that changes. The combination matters more than any single food. Each item works through a slightly different part of the same system. Some increase production, some provide raw materials, some protect what's already been made. Together, they address the same decline in nitric oxide availability from multiple directions. 3 things before tonight is over. Look at what you already have in the kitchen right now. If you have spinach or arugula, walnuts, or dark chocolate, you have something from this list that you can add to whatever you're eating tonight. If you get leg cramping or heaviness consistently, try this routine for 7 consecutive evenings before deciding whether it's doing anything. The nitric oxide effect from dietary changes takes several days of consistent intake to show its full impact, not one night. And if you're already on medication for blood pressure or circulation, mention any significant dietary changes involving beetroot or pomegranate to your doctor at the next appointment. Both have measurable effects on blood pressure that are usually positive, but worth mentioning if you're being actively managed for it. Write in the comments which of the 7 you already eat regularly, and whether you've noticed anything about your leg circulation, warmer feet, less evening heaviness, less cramping at night, and your age, and where you're watching from. The comments on this one specifically help me understand whether the approach is landing for people who are already doing some of this versus people who are starting from scratch.